Okay, so part two of dealing with PImage. So what we want to accomplish here is just show how we might um, grab a piece of an image from somewhere, from one of the existing images, and reapply that on top or into a grid or as a brush. I mean, there are lots of possibilities here. Let's just deal with the basics of how that's done. So to copy from a chunk from one image and use it, what we what we need to do is create a third image that can do the grabbing, right? Because these images have already been assigned to be this. Okay, we can't reassign it to be a chunk of that. So what we're going to do is PImage, and we'll create an empty one. So we're just declaring this variable as grab. Now, we don't have to initialize it here because we're going to get it from somewhere else. Okay? We have to tell it what it is before we can use it. Here we've told Dane1 to be Dane1 JPEG. We've told Dane2 to be Dane2 JPEG. Now what we're going to do is tell grab to equal Dane1 dot get. Okay, so get is a function of, let's see, so if we go to the reference library and we find wherever PImage is, you can see that it has a bunch of methods, and get is one here, reads the color of any pixel or grabs a rectangle of pixels, right? So we're going to go ahead and get, now all we need to do is choose a location. I want to do this as random. And because I've done this before, and as I demonstrated in class, the random returns a float, and this the parameter here has to be an integer. So I'm going to say integer random, and then I'll say this is going to be width, and we'll close it with two brackets because we had one there and one here. And then we'll say integer random height. Close that off, and I don't know, let's make it 250 by 250. So that's the size of the chunk of image that we're going to grab. Let's see if that runs without any errors. Seems to be fine. All right, and then the last thing we want to do is say, hey, image, and that image is going to be grab. Oops, grab. And then that's the name of the image here, and then we can just set the position. I know, let's do 250, 275 by 275 or 300. I want to kind of split it in a certain way, and we'll just leave the rest of that blank, so we'll just do whatever the size that we told it to grab. Alright, so now we have this chunk, and it's just every frame is grabbing a random frame and throwing that down on top of it, right? So the idea here is that as we move forward, how could we use kind of a nested for loop to grab a grid of images, but each time it grabs a chunk from somewhere else. Say maybe it grabs a chunk from image 1 and then image 2, and that's just, I just have 2 in here. What if I had 10 images or 5 images that could vary the type of mosaic that we would create, because the images would be slightly different from each other. So, but that's for another tutorial. So the thing here is that we added another image. We didn't have to initialize it here because we did it down here in the draw. We loaded that chunk. We could do it, let's go ahead and stop this. We could do it up here. Right, let's say X. And for those playing along at home, see, guess what's going to happen? So every time that it loads it, it's going to give me a random image, chunk of that image. And the reason I'm coming up with something that's smaller than that is because the random is running into the edge of the image. Okay, it's running off the side there. So there's some other things that we could do to fix that. Okay, so it just keeps finding the edge. There's another. That's a good one. I like that one. Right, so we're just placing this random chunk, and once we just loaded it once, so it doesn't continually reload, it just continually redraws it because it's down here in the draw. Okay, so that was part 2. We'll move on to the next one.